Hi there, I'm a mother of an hypoplastic left heart syndrome child, and I want to tell you a little bit about our second operation, so Glenn, and what it was like afterwards, how our healing process was afterwards, and I'm trying to give you a little bit of a time frame of how long it took us to recover. You noticed 2 disclaimers. I'm not a native speaker, so I'm sorry because I'm missing a lot of vocab because I didn't experience any of it in English, so my language will be a little bit wobbly, probably is the best way to say. And second of all, I have no clue how to film, so sorry again. I hope you're interested enough in our story to oversee those things. Okay, so on the 5th of February we had our second operation, so we had our Glenn operation, and it was really hard for me because I had to give him away again. Beforehand we had several cardiac catheters. I'm still learning that word, so it's hard for my tongue to move accordingly. And I already knew how it was to give him away, but with the operation there were a lot more thoughts on my mind, and it was way harder for me, and it happened just really. Normally I could give him away, say goodbye to him. He was already drowsier in those states, but with the operation he wasn't as drowsy because they forgot to give him the pill that made him drowsy, and I had to hand him to a nurse, and that was it, because the nurse didn't give me any time to say goodbye, and I know it probably just would have aroused him and made it more difficult, but still for me it was really hard. Okay, so the operation afterwards, for me, really hard, but went well, so nothing to complain there. Basically there was a possibility that they had to do a cardiac catheter afterwards because he has 2 narrow passes, and actually they did it. So they told us beforehand it could happen. They also said it might not happen. It happened. We were prepared basically, and that's it. I was heartbroken afterwards because I gave them basically this happy child that moved a lot and was really happy and smiling at everything, and afterwards he was just laying there blown up so that we almost couldn't recognize him, and not moving at all, and that's really hard to see, especially if you have a really happy active child normally. But okay, that was fine. We knew that would happen. Still a shock for us. Another thing that happened was they told us they may leave the chest open so that the heart could swell up and swell down again, and that it doesn't get too tight in the chest area, and they did. They closed that wound up 2 days after the operation, so post-operation probably to say. Yeah, so we were in intensive care. They were great, understanding, telling us a lot of things. And okay, so to the next point, that was 6 days after the operation. They had to do another cardiac catheter. I'm learning, you see. Sorry. Because of the second narrow place, and they did their stent again, and that helped obviously. They also pulled all his drainage. Sorry, I don't know how to say them, but 3 things that support all the bad. I know I'm really not using the terminology, I'm sorry, but the bad fluids for the body that drain out of the body after an operation, and those things they pulled because it was healing quite well. Yeah, the next day was a hard day for us because he had to be reanimated. I'm going to do another video where I tell you explicitly what happened and why he had to be reanimated. just to tell you, I was totally devastated. And in my opinion, probably there... No. Okay. Okay. He had to be reanimated. That's it. Okay, then what was really bad, or what wasn't good in his healing process, was his breathing. So they tried to extubate him on the 9th day. They didn't succeed at it, so he couldn't breathe on his own, so they had to immediately re-intubate him. And that was quite hard to see. It was awful. It was not nice. But they succeeded on their second attempt. That was 4 days later, so on the 13th day they tried it again and they succeeded, and he wasn't stable for a few hours, but it got better and better and he did a fine job. After that, it was not an easy way of recovery, and there were some bumps, but nothing too spectacular anymore. We got from the intensive care to the intermediate care station, and I'm sorry, I can't tell you the time frame for that. I just know I had a breaking point there, because I already told you it's hard to give away a child that's healthy. I'm sorry, I know he's not healthy, but as healthy as he can be, and then get a child that's just not the child you know, basically. You know, that active child, and you have a child that's not responding, not active at all. And there was a point in intermediate care where I just thought that the second reanimation did some damage. Yeah, his first reanimation was on his 3rd day of life, and then the second reanimation I just told you a little bit about. And they didn't tell us if there would be damage or not. They couldn't tell us, and at that point in intermediate care I was convinced that he had brain damage and that everything was wrong, because he was not responding accordingly. He was just laying there and crying a lot. He was crying. He normally didn't cry as much as he did at that point. And I know it's probably the withdrawal of the medication he went under, and that had a lot to do with it, but I couldn't process it like that. So I was totally broken down and sad and cried a lot, and it was awful for me. So luckily for me, a day after I broke down with all those bad thoughts, he got better. He got so much more like I used to know him, and I was so happy about it, that he was back. And yeah, so it turned out he probably has no brain damage from his 2 reanimation points, whatever, and he still was quite healthy. There was another thing that was a bummer for me. So he was tube fed, as is normal with operations, and because he was beforehand tube fed, it was also normal for us that he was tube fed. And I wanted to talk to and now I'm sorry for not pronouncing it right, logopedic. At least that's what Google told me how to say it. Sorry. So that therapist that's there for the tube feeding and everything with the mouth related language, I tell you sometimes. Okay, and I told her I want him to bottle feed and if possible breastfeed, and she was like, oh no, he will never breastfeed, and bottle feeding is overrated and we should get to solid foods. Well, not the solid foods, but the in-between things. And I was like, I don't want him to eat quite yet. I want him to bottle feed at least. And she was like, okay, then I can't help you. Because that stayed with me quite a long time. I asked her for a talk later on, and she just told me, no, I didn't hear her correctly. She just told me that I should reach out to her later on. Can't tell you what is the truth or not. I wanted my child to bottle feed. That's it. Yeah, so he was tube fed, normal. Almost a month, a little bit under a month after operation, we got to the normal station, so where everything was a little bit more loose, where I could actually handle him again, and that was really nice. The only thing that was really worrying to me was that he threw up quite a lot, and that is of course with the tube feeding that that children start to throw up, because yeah, not going into that. I shouldn't go into that right now. Yeah, so he threw up a lot, and because I started trusting the nurses, woo, big part of me and the nurses is not trusting them, but at the end I started trusting them, and I wanted to take a shower basically, and I didn't know if he would throw up or not, and that's why I gave him to the nurses, and they were really wonderful to him. Yeah, and a week after we got to normal station, we got released from the hospital. Yay! Still with a tube, still with medications, and yeah, so that's our story, and a little bit of a timeline of how our recovery route was after in the hospital. Weird formulation, I know, I'm sorry. I hope it helped you understand a little bit, and I hopefully could also show you that it was basically an emotional roller coaster also for me. And that's it. Bye for now.